Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into something a little mythological. Barefoot, probably, with sandals in hand. As you wander onto the smooth marble steps of Mount Olympus at the exact moment Zeus is unveiling what he's calling his relaxing little maze. Columns shimmer in the fading sun, clouds puff gently beneath your feet, and there's this odd smell of toasted nectar in the air, as if someone, somewhere, just dropped a divine waffle into a lightning bolt. You squint, and there it is. Sprawling out across the normally well organized Olympian courtyard is something that looks suspiciously like a giant hedge maze. Except instead of hedges, it's made of glittering alabaster, constantly shifting archways, and suspiciously giggling frescoes that keep changing poses when no one's looking. A warm breeze stirs your hair. The labyrinth hums softly, like it's waiting. Zeus, of course, beams proudly, arms outstretched like a game show host introducing a slightly cursed grand prize. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Oh, and leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. The gods love to know where their audience lives. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You look around. The gods are gathering, some intrigued, some exasperated. Hera already has that look on her face. The one that says, I married this? Poseidon's trident is tapping the floor impatiently, and Hermes is quietly measuring the labyrinth's entrance, possibly with resale in mind. Now, if you're thinking this sounds like the kind of thing that goes horribly wrong, you're not alone. Ancient Greek myths have never exactly been famous for their planning or health and safety standards. You can't help but wonder what inspired Zeus to suddenly create a labyrinth. Historians still argue whether he was feeling nostalgic for the Minoan days or just bored after binge watching mortals invent escape rooms. But here you are, sandals in hand, walking up to the edge of something mythic. The ground gently slopes into the entrance, which is glowing faintly, like the inside of a pearl. There's no map. There never is. The air inside the maze is cooler, carrying the scent of ancient scrolls, olive oil, and something suspiciously like cinnamon. You take a few slow steps in, trailing behind the gods who are reluctantly joining this strange group activity. Now here's the historical tidbit for tonight. Ancient labyrinths weren't just legends. They were deeply symbolic. They represented the winding paths of human experience, the unknown, and sometimes just very confusing architectural design. The most famous one, of course, was King Minos' labyrinth at Knossos, allegedly built to house the Minotaur. Though, fun fact, actual archaeological digs at Knossos didn't turn up any clear labyrinth, unless you count the plumbing system, which is admittedly quite confusing. But this maze? This one's different. Divine made, ever shifting, possibly sentient, and you're starting to suspect that Zeus didn't build it with an exit in mind. A ripple passes through the walls. You blink. Did that column just wink at you? You step forward, and immediately the path behind you closes. Classic. From somewhere up ahead, you hear Aphrodite sigh dramatically and mutter, I had plans today. You laugh softly to yourself. What did you expect from a king of gods with zero project management experience and a well-documented tendency to start things he doesn't finish? Remember the Trojan War? That escalated from a dinner party guest list issue. As you turn a corner, the floor tile feels pulse under your feet, illuminating your steps like some divine disco. Another twist. Another turn. You see Dionysus holding a goblet and attempting to take selfies with a particularly decorative archway. And somewhere deep within the maze, a low rumble, like a marble stomach growling. You pause, hand on the cool wall. It vibrates slightly, as if listening. There's no need to panic. You've made worse choices before, like that time you agreed to play charades with Apollo. As you wander further, the labyrinth starts to feel strangely familiar, like a dream you've had before, where the hallways loop and the rooms repeat with slight unnerving differences. The walls whisper stories. You pass a frieze of Zeus hurling thunderbolts, only to turn a corner and see the same frieze, except now he's wearing a sun hat. Another hallway leads to a courtyard with floating benches and a lemon tree that sings softly in Dorian mode. You sit briefly, letting the drowsy breeze lull your limbs into calm. You notice a butterfly land on your arm. It has miniature lightning bolts on its wings. It blinks once, shrugs, you swear, and flutters away. Far in the distance, you think you hear someone, maybe Athena, calling out instructions no one is listening to. You don't know how long you've been walking. Time in this maze seems like a suggestion, not a rule. The floor patterns have changed from mosaic dolphins to a map of constellations. You pass a doorway marked "Definitely not the exit," and beyond it, you glimpse what looks like a spa for retired centaurs. It's peaceful, confusing, beautiful, just like the myths themselves, layered, looping, and lightly ridiculous. And just when you think you've seen it all, a pigeon flies by wearing a tiny laurel wreath. You nod at it. It nods back. The maze breathes, shifting gently. Somewhere far away, a god stubs his toe on an enchanted pillar and lets out a muffled curse. You smile. This is going to be a long, weird stroll. But don't worry, you probably won't survive this, logically speaking. But then again, logic left the building around the same time as that self-updating doorway. Let your eyes grow heavy as the corridors stretch endlessly ahead, every turn leading deeper into a story that might never make sense. And honestly, doesn't need to. You're here now. Let's keep walking. So, you're in the labyrinth now, officially committed, and it's starting to become very clear that Zeus might not have exactly thought this through. Or maybe he did, but like most of his grand ideas, he left somewhere around 65% of it to divine improvisation. The walls are whispering again, softly echoing phrases like "this way" and "wrong again," in what sounds suspiciously like the voice of Hermes doing impressions of tourists. Up ahead, the rest of the gods are milling about, not charging forward, not solving anything, just sort of loitering. Athena is holding her owl like it's a navigation tool. Dionysus has pulled out a couch from nowhere and is lying sideways across it like a lounge ad from 400 BC. Zeus stands at the front with a confident grin plastered across his face. He gestures broadly. "All right, everyone, just follow me." Ah, yes, classic Zeus. He takes 3 overly theatrical steps, turns left into an archway that emits a noise like a confused harp, and promptly vanishes. Gone, no echo, no puff of thunderclouds, just gone, a moment of silence. Then, in unison, the rest of the gods all sigh. Aphrodite, "Well, that took less time than I thought." Apollo, 10 drachma says he ends up in his own ego chamber. Hermes, "I give him 5 minutes before he starts yelling poetic threats at the walls." You follow the others toward the archway, but now it looks different, like it's pretending to be a perfectly normal passageway while sneakily rotating itself just enough to mislead everyone. You step through anyway. The hallway opens into a chamber full of mirror-like columns, each one reflecting a version of the gods that, well, let's say some of them would rather not see. Ares in a tutu. Athena tripping over her own battle plans. Hera laughing. Yes, laughing, not glaring, actually enjoying herself. It's unsettling. The gods shuffle through the reflections awkwardly. Even divine beings don't enjoy unexpected emotional vulnerability. Here's your historical nugget to nibble on. Ancient Greek labyrinths were often symbols of psychological or spiritual journeys, especially in later interpretations. Some Hellenistic temples had real walking labyrinths etched into the stone, designed not to trap people but to slow them down, get them meditative, or dizzy. Honestly, same result. You pause near one of the columns. It shows you. Not as you are now, but as a toga-clad marble statue version of yourself, yawning dramatically. Charming. You trudge on. Now the path is lined with giant amphorae that mumble poetry as you walk past. One complains that no one appreciates iambic hexameter anymore. Another whispers, "Zeus tripped here." You laugh quietly. That sounds about right. Somewhere nearby, you hear the rhythmic strum of a lyre. You turn a corner, and there he is, Apollo, seated on a smooth stone bench, casually tuning his instrument while basking in a narrow beam of golden light that follows him wherever he goes. Because of course it does. He looks up and gives you the kind of half-smile that's both lazy and divine. "Trying to soothe the maze into submission," he explains. "Music therapy. It works for mortals, and occasionally for moody architecture." He plucks a chord. The wall next to him melts slightly, then reshapes itself into a door, which immediately slams shut again with a wet marble blorp. "Still in the experimental phase," Apollo says, unfazed. You sit for a moment, enjoying the melody. The music is slow, like honey pouring uphill. Your shoulders relax. Even your sandals seem to sigh with relief. But just when you start to think Apollo might be onto something, the labyrinth decides to retaliate. a gust of cinnamon-scented air bursts through the corridor, sending sheet music flying in every direction. The notes swirl into strange shapes. One of them briefly resembles Zeus's face and sneezes. Apollo sighs. Mood swings. Should have known. He shrugs, plucks one last note, which sounds suspiciously like a sheep hiccuping, and then continues on. You rise, a little woozy from the music. You follow him, and the path narrows into a tunnel with glowing murals. Scenes from myths long forgotten flash by. A satyr who accidentally invented spaghetti, a centaur moonlighting as a dance instructor, Hera knitting a scarf that turns into a snake halfway through. You walk slower now. The floor beneath you pulses gently, like the heartbeat of something ancient and slightly bemused. Historians still argue whether the concept of a divine-built maze like this could reflect the Hellenic view of fate, inescapable, unpredictable, and likely to embarrass you when you least expect it. As the hallway straightens, you catch sight of a familiar flash of robes. Hermes zips past, holding a suspiciously overstuffed bag. You raise an eyebrow. Merchandise, he calls. Souvenir nectar cubes, maze maps that may or may not work. 1 drachma each. He set up a foldable table next to a water feature shaped like a sighing dolphin. Only Hermes could figure out how to monetize being trapped in a divine labyrinth. You half expect him to offer a loyalty card. The gods are drifting in and out of view now, each dealing with the maze in their own dramatic way. Dionysus is trying to charm a wall with flirtatious haikus. Artemis is not so subtly carving arrows into the floor for direction. You're just taking it all in. The quiet absurdity, the divine dysfunction. The fact that somewhere in this marble mess, Zeus, the king of gods, the thunderbolt thrower, the alpha of Olympus, is almost certainly very, very lost. It's strangely comforting. You round another bend. The air is warmer here, softer. A faint hum, like a lullaby half remembered, floats from the walls. You don't know where you're going, but honestly, that's okay. The hallway you're in now starts tilting slightly to the left, just enough to make you feel like maybe the floor is plotting something. You reach out and steady yourself against the cool stone, still humming that lullaby-like sound under your fingertips. It almost feels like the maze is trying to soothe you or lull you into a deeper state of confusion. Either way, you accept it. Behind you, faint footsteps. Probably Artemis again, quiet as moonlight, double-checking her own trail of carved arrows. Or maybe it's just the walls replaying someone else's steps from 5 minutes ago. Hard to tell. And then, just as you're beginning to think it's time for a nap break, you enter a corridor that appears completely normal. No shifting walls, no whispering columns, no minotaur holding a latte. You should have known better. The moment you take one step into the quiet hallway, the doorway behind you sighs shut. And ahead of you, the path stretches out perfectly straight, but something about it is off. Your footsteps echo a little too loudly. The walls are too blank, too smooth, like freshly wiped chalkboards. You keep walking, and then you hear it. A voice. Yours. Repeating what you just said, or what you thought. I really hope that was just a shadow. You stop. Did you say that? Did the corridor say that? Is the corridor you now? No time to answer. Because just as you turn your head, you realize that this passage is an echo tunnel. Not just your voice, your thoughts are starting to bounce back at you. Slightly delayed, slightly warped. It's disorienting. It's like having your internal monologue narrated by a version of you that's just a little sassier. You hear Artemis ahead, clearly frustrated. Okay, if I hear one more echo of, "Why did I come in here?" I'm going to shoot the wall. You catch up with her. She's standing still, arms crossed, eyebrows twitching. Around her, the echoes multiply, not just hers, but everyone's. Somewhere to your left, a ghostly Hera mutters, "I told him this would happen." To the right, a disembodied Ares huffs, "If I punch this wall, will it learn respect?" Then Dionysus, faint and dreamy. "This tunnel reminds me of my third hangover. The walls are listening." That's the only explanation. And like any good Olympian audience, they're replaying the juiciest bits. You and Artemis glance at each other. She pulls her hood a little lower. Let's walk fast and pretend this never happened. As you speed walk, the walls throw in some of your own inner dialogue. Why is Zeus always like this? Do nectar cubes expire? I'm not lost. The labyrinth is just ignoring me. Apollo's voice pipes up from somewhere above. What do you mean you forgot the emergency exit? That one causes the wall next to you to giggle. Yes, audibly. And then, finally, the tunnel ends. You both step out into a large chamber filled with soft, glowing vines crawling down from the ceiling. It's quiet. The echoes don't follow you here. You exhale deeply. Artemis kneels by a small pool of water and splashes some on her face. That place was exhausting, like being trapped inside your own diary. You nod. Except the diary reads back to you with commentary. You sit for a moment on a bench that wasn't there a second ago. That's fine. You're long past questioning the furniture situation. Here's a neat mythological fact to chew on as you catch your breath. Not all Greek labyrinths were about monsters. Some were about memory. The philosopher Plato once referenced a labyrinth of the mind, where ideas loop endlessly unless properly guided. Sound familiar? And while historians still argue whether physical mazes ever held as much importance as symbolic ones in Greek ritual, there are theories that temples used echo chambers like this one to simulate divine voices. A little spooky, a little brilliant. You look around. Vines begin to retract into the ceiling, revealing a fresco, one depicting the gods wandering aimlessly through the same maze you're in now. You spot Zeus in the painting, looking bewildered, holding a scroll upside down. In the corner, someone's drawn a tiny Hermes offering maze maps for 5 obols. The longer you look, the more the fresco animates. The figures move slightly, shifting just enough to catch your eye. And then, faintly, you hear something. A cough, a dramatic sigh, and then a very familiar voice. I am not lost. The maze is simply beneath me. You and Artemis freeze. Oh no, she says flatly. He's started monologuing. You both stand. The walls ahead ripple and open, revealing another path, this one dimly lit by floating orbs that pulse like sleepy fireflies. You walk forward, footsteps soft. A few steps in, the air smells faintly of roasted almonds. You suspect Hermes has set up another pop-up stand, possibly next to a wall that sells gossip. You wonder if Zeus knows everyone else is barely trying to find him. They're just vibing, exploring, shopping, and somehow that makes the labyrinth feel more like home. Like a strange dream where nothing matters as long as you keep walking and occasionally snack on magical almonds. The ceiling stretches upward now, revealing a faux sky that cycles slowly through day and night. You're not sure if it's meant to comfort or confuse. Probably both. You walk on, deeper into the strangeness, a soft laugh escaping your lips as the corridor ahead reshapes into the next mystery. You walk beneath that faux sky for what feels like half a nap. It shifts lazily from morning gold to sunset pink, and then to a navy twilight dotted with tiny, twinkling constellations that blink out Greek letters when you squint at them just right. You try spelling something with your eyes. Maybe Zeus? But the stars just shuffle into something that loosely resembles the word oops. Typical. The corridor begins to narrow, funneling you into a wide circular room where the temperature drops ever so slightly. There, at the center, is a peculiar sight. A table shaped like an olive branch, its surface covered in scrolls and wax tablets, quills standing upright in jars like little feathery soldiers. The entire room smells of cedarwood and mildly burnt offerings. And who's here now? Athena, of course. Surrounded by floating diagrams and muttering equations under her breath. A chalkboard floats beside her, scribbled with what looks like tactical labyrinth geometry. None of it makes any actual sense. Welcome to my temporary war room, she says, not looking up. Though nothing's very temporary in this place. Time loops, strategies melt, and one of the walls keeps whispering compliments at me. It's unsettling. You hear a faint, clever girl from the stonework and choose not to react. She finally glances at you. You're here to help or just spectate? You raise an eyebrow. Spectate it is, she sighs. While she paces, the scrolls unfurl themselves, displaying intricate maps of the labyrinth that appear to change every time she blinks. On one version, Zeus is marked with a tiny lightning bolt icon. On another, he's been replaced with a question mark and a frowny face. One scroll flickers and displays the words, Maze Error, Hero Not Found. You can't help but smile. Athena gestures toward a stack of wax tablets. Feel free to log your observations. The maze likes documentation, especially footnotes. You pick one up. It's already inscribed with Lost Again, beginning to suspect Zeus did this on purpose. Here's a historical tidbit you didn't expect in the middle of this marble dreamscape. In ancient Athens, wax tablets weren't just used for keeping notes. They were often erased and reused, making them ideal for chaotic thinkers. like generals, or gods trying to track their own blunders through an enchanted architectural prank. You sit at the edge of the table. A quill hovers over a blank space and writes, without your permission. Still no Minotaur. Mildly disappointed. You glance at Athena. There's not actually a Minotaur in here, right? She shrugs. Statistically unlikely. But this place doesn't operate on statistics. And now comes the fringe myth twist. Because there's always one. Some obscure Hellenic texts hinted that Zeus once tried to build a labyrinth not as a prison, but as an ego maze, a structure designed to house all the conflicting pieces of his personality. That's right, a god-sized therapy chamber, which might explain why every room has a slightly different emotional temperature, or why the corridors keep reflecting your mood back at you like a sleep-deprived therapist with a flair for lighting design. Athena pulls a glowing bead from her belt pouch and rolls it across the table. It hums and stops, pointing toward an unassuming wall. She raises an eyebrow. If that's accurate, he's pacing in circles on the 7th level. You blink. There are levels? There weren't, until he fell through one. She tucks the bead away and stands, brushing her hands. You'll come with me. You seem calm enough not to set off the sarcasm doors. You both exit into a hallway made entirely of soft limestone, etched faintly with vine patterns. It smells faintly of honey and something you can only describe as ambitious fig. As you walk, Athena casually flips open a small mechanical bird that chirps compass directions in ancient Doric. It sounds annoyed about being woken up. You ask her if she thinks Zeus is actually trying to get out of the maze. She snorts. Please. He's probably giving motivational speeches to his reflection. The hallway bends, literally bends, like a scroll curling in on itself, and leads you into a circular staircase. But instead of stairs, it's a slow, spiraling ramp with cloud-like steps that compress gently underfoot. You feel lighter, sleepier. Your thoughts blur at the edges. Athena doesn't seem to notice. She's muttering to herself again, calculating divine probability matrices, which are basically just fancy ways to say guessing with flair. You try to keep up, both with her pace and her increasingly abstract logic. Do you think he's learned anything in here? You ask. She pauses. For once, no sarcasm. No, but I might have. And there it is, a crack in the divine shell. Here's the scholarly debate portion for today. Some historians argue that the Greek gods were never meant to be worshipped as moral models, but as reflections of human excess and unpredictability. The labyrinth, then, might not be about Zeus at all. Maybe it's about you, the observer, trying to make sense of something inherently chaotic. Athena starts humming a lullaby from her childhood, taught to her by Mnemosyne, goddess of memory. It has no words, but the melody somehow wraps around your shoulders like a warm fleece. The ramp spirals upward now. You begin to see a glow through the arch ahead. A light flickers. A silhouette, Zeus? Possibly. Or just another animated fresco. You'll find out in the next chamber. But for now, you're drifting again. The lull of footsteps, the calm of divine muttering, the soft, endless spiral. And still no Minotaur. Just echoes and egos. You sigh and keep walking. The light ahead pulses gently, a soft golden glow like sunlight filtered through honeycomb. As you step into the chamber, you notice the walls are covered in enormous frescoes, each depicting different moments of Zeus's legendary escapades. But here, something's off. The colors swirl lazily, as if the paint itself is alive, breathing in slow waves that pull your eyes along like the gentle tide. You approach one fresco, a scene where Zeus is disguised as a bull, charming a group of nymphs. But their faces keep shifting, morphing between joy, confusion, and mild suspicion. You can almost hear their internal monologue, which seems to go like, is that bull flirting or just really polite? A small chuckle escapes your lips, which startles you because it sounds louder than intended in the quiet room. Off to the side, a carved marble bench invites you to sit. You comply, feeling the coolness seep through your clothes, settling like a gentle whisper on your skin. As you settle in, you spot a peculiar figure in the corner, a miniature version of Hermes, busily scribbling notes on a tiny scroll while balancing on one foot. Lost your winged sandals again, have you? You ask, though it's not entirely clear if the figure is real or just part of the fresco's slow dance. Hermes looks up, grinning mischievously. No, I'm cataloging all the labyrinth's exit attempts. Zeus has tried at least 17 so far. You raise an eyebrow? 17? And none worked? Not exactly, Hermes replies, but none worked well. Each time he gets a bit further before realizing he forgot where he left his lightning bolt. You laugh softly, imagining the king of gods bumbling through his own maze like a sleep-deprived tourist without Google Maps. Here's a fun historical nugget. Labyrinths in ancient Greece weren't just mythical prisons. They were real architectural wonders used in religious ceremonies and festivals, sometimes designed to represent the journey of the soul. The Palace of Knossos, often linked to the Minotaur myth, might have inspired this maze, though historians still argue whether its complex corridors were intended as a labyrinth or simply practical palace design. Hermes flips his scroll dramatically. And let's not forget, labyrinths also served as symbolic gateways to the underworld. So if Zeus gets really lost, he might accidentally gatecrash Hades' party. You glance around, half expecting to see Hades waving from a shadowy corner, but there's only silence and that slow swirl of fresco colors. Hermes winks. You know, some obscure texts suggest that Zeus didn't build this labyrinth alone. There's talk of Daedalus being hired on a divine whim to create a maze that even the gods couldn't escape. You grin at the thought of Daedalus, the legendary craftsman who famously built the labyrinth for King Minos, now repurposed to humble the king of gods himself. This place really messes with your ego, doesn't it? You muse aloud. Hermes nods solemnly. Oh, absolutely. Even the mightiest lightning thrower needs a dose of humility now and then. As you glance back at the fresco, a new scene unfurls, a version where Zeus is calmly sipping nectar, completely ignoring a frantic maze map drawn on a nearby pillar. Hermes chuckles. Sometimes, the best way to get lost is to stop caring where you're going. You settle deeper into the bench, feeling the room's warmth wash over you. The soft hum of the fresco's colors and Hermes' quiet scribbling form a lullaby for your wandering mind. Another quirky tidbit. Ancient Greeks sometimes believed that being lost wasn't just physical, but spiritual, an opportunity for growth and transformation. Labyrinths, in that sense, were less prisons and more places for deep reflection, much like a slow afternoon nap for the soul. You let your eyes drift closed for a moment, imagining Zeus pacing these corridors, shifting from frustration to amusement to quiet contemplation. As you sit in the mellow glow, you realize this labyrinth isn't just about getting out. It's about getting in, into the mind of a god, tangled and beautiful in its imperfection. Hermes folds his scroll and stands, brushing dust off his miniature robes. Ready to move on? You nod, standing up slowly as the frescoes fade into soft pastels behind you. Hermes leads you to a narrow passageway, lined with whispering ivy that seems to murmur encouragements in an ancient dialect you can almost understand. Just as you step through, you glance back one last time. The golden glow dims, leaving behind a gentle echo of laughter and the faint scent of ambrosia. You follow Hermes into the next chamber, your footsteps light, your mind a little softer, and your heart curious about what else this maze might reveal. The passage Hermes guides you through narrows, the air cooling and thickening with the scent of damp stone and moss. You step carefully, your fingers brushing against the ivy's soft leaves, which seem almost to pulse with life under your touch. There's an unexpected serenity here, like slipping into the quiet moments just before dawn. Ahead, the corridor opens into a vast underground grotto, softly illuminated by bioluminescent fungi that glow in shades of gentle blue and green. The light casts eerie yet soothing shadows on the jagged walls, creating the impression that the cave itself is breathing slowly. In the center of the grotto stands an ancient altar, carved from a single slab of marble. It's adorned with faded etchings of serpents, owls, and a peculiar symbol that you don't immediately recognize. As you step closer, you notice the scent of sweet herbs, thyme and lavender, still lingers, as if the altar is waiting for a long-forgotten ceremony to resume. Hermes clears his throat. "This is the shrine to Metis, the goddess of wisdom and cunning," he says softly. "Zeus's first wife, if you remember." You nod, recalling the stories you half remembered from your school days. How Zeus swallowed Metis whole to prevent a prophecy that their child would overthrow him, only for Athena to be born fully grown from his forehead later. A myth packed with enough intrigue to keep you up past bedtime. But this shrine has a different vibe. less dramatic and more contemplative, like a quiet nod to the ideas Métis represented rather than the more sensational stories. It's interesting to note that in ancient Greece, wisdom was often linked to both the divine and the practical, a fusion of cleverness and deep insight. Métis was seen as the embodiment of this balance. Her name literally means cunning intelligence. Historians still argue whether Métis was originally a separate deity or an aspect of Athena that evolved over time. As you run your fingers along the smooth surface of the altar, you find a small hidden compartment carved into the stone. Inside is a delicate, almost translucent scroll sealed with a tiny wax emblem of an owl. You break the seal gently, and the script inside glows faintly in the blue light. Hermes leans closer. This is one of the Labyrinth's secrets, a riddle left by Medes herself. You squint at the text. It reads, "In shadows deep where serpents creep, the path to light you softly keep, not by strength nor lightning's strike, but by wisdom's gentle hike." You smile softly. It's a puzzle, of course. But unlike the usual confounding labyrinth clues, this one feels like a whispered encouragement rather than a challenge. There's a fringe theory among scholars that many Greek myths, including those about Zeus, were originally allegories for human psychology and natural phenomena, rather than literal histories. This shrine to Métis seems to embody that idea perfectly, a symbol that sometimes the most powerful tool isn't brute force, but quiet reflection. You sit cross-legged near the altar, letting the glowing fungi's soft light soothe your mind. The gentle drip of water echoes in the distance, mixing with the faint scratch of Hermes' pen as he continues recording his observations in the corner. You can almost imagine Zeus himself pausing here, humbled by the wisdom he once swallowed whole, now whispered gently through the moss and stone. A quiet joke crosses your mind. If Zeus had just stopped to think before swallowing Métis, he might have avoided a major headache, or at least saved himself from an impromptu forehead birthing. As you lean back, the cave's calm wraps around you like a soft blanket, and you feel your thoughts slow, your breathing deepening into the kind of rhythm that hints at dreams just around the corner. Hermes whispers, "Ready to see what comes next? The labyrinth always has more stories." You nod, savoring the moment just a little longer before standing and following him down the next tunnel, the riddle's words echoing quietly in your mind. The corridor twists gently as you follow Hermes deeper into the labyrinth's winding embrace. The air grows cooler still, carrying with it a faint scent of pine and something sweeter, like honey, or perhaps a distant orchard. You imagine the labyrinth itself might be alive, breathing softly beneath the earth, exhaling ancient stories along with the air. Ahead, the passage opens into a chamber unlike any you've seen so far. Wide and round, its walls covered in faded frescoes depicting scenes of pastoral life. Farmers sowing grain, children chasing butterflies, and animals resting peacefully under olive trees. The colors are muted but warm, as if the sun itself had been captured in paint and dimmed by centuries. Hermes gestures toward the murals. "This is the grove of Demeter," he says quietly, "the goddess of harvest, whose blessings meant life or hunger for the ancient Greeks." You trace the outlines of ripe pomegranates and sheaves of wheat, marveling at how central food was to survival back then. You remember that the word democracy literally means rule by the people. But in these old times, it could have easily meant rule by the harvest, because without good crops, no society lasted long. Here's a little known fact. Ancient Greek farmers sometimes used a peculiar method to protect their fields, planting small statues of besotted satyrs, half man, half goat figures, to scare off pests and, according to folklore, mischievous spirits. The blend of practical agriculture and myth feels oddly charming, like the world was just as much about stories as it was about dirt and sweat. Historians still argue whether these satyr statues were genuine pest control or more symbolic talismans meant to encourage fertility. Either way, you can't help but smile at the image of a goat-legged creature standing guard over wheat stalks. As you wander around the chamber, a soft rustling breaks the silence. A gentle breeze, impossible this deep underground, stirs loose leaves on the floor, revealing a weathered scroll tucked beneath a stone bench. Hermes picks it up carefully, unrolling it to reveal a series of ancient recipes. Not for grand feasts, but humble meals, barley porridge, roasted olives, and a stew made with wild herbs and goat cheese. The simplicity is soothing, almost meditative, a reminder that even gods and heroes needed to eat. You think about how food connects us, then and now. The Greeks believed that sharing a meal was sacred, a way to honor the gods and bind communities together. There's a whisper among scholars about whether these recipes actually come from common folk or were idealized versions penned by wealthy scribes. Either way, they offer a quiet window into daily life, as comforting as the gentle crackle of a hearth fire. You settle down against the cool stone wall, letting the peacefulness of the grove wash over you. Your eyelids feel heavier, the stories wrapping around you like a soft cloak. Hermes, ever the mischievous guide, chuckles softly. You might not survive a day in the fields, but you can always enjoy the harvest's tale. A gentle chuckle escapes you, the slow rhythm of the labyrinth lulling your thoughts toward dreams of olive groves and golden wheat. You rise from the grove of Demeter with a lingering sense of calm, stepping back into the labyrinth's dim corridors where the scent shifts subtly, now more metallic, faintly smoky, like distant forges working through the night. Hermes leads you onward, his footsteps barely stirring the dust. Ahead, the path narrows and the walls are carved with symbols of invention. Gears, rudimentary cranes, and the outlines of strange contraptions that look as much like sculptures as tools. You realize you've entered a sort of workshop or archive devoted to ancient Greek inventions. You remember that the Greeks were remarkable tinkerers, credited with early versions of water clocks, odometers, and even primitive steam engines. These early marvels might seem simple today, but back then they were nothing short of magic. In fact, Hero of Alexandria's steam-powered device, called the Aeolipile, is sometimes called the first robot of history. But here's the quirky bit. Some inventors were said to have built automata, mechanical statues that moved on their own, powered by water or air. Imagine that. Wind-up gods and heroes roaming temples, confusing worshippers, or perhaps making them smile. Historians still argue whether these automata were widespread entertainment or isolated curiosities of the elite. Either way, the idea that ancient people dreamed up robots long before electricity is both delightful and strange. Hermes points to a faded inscription on the wall, half erased by time. It mentions Daedalus, not just the labyrinth's architect, but a legendary inventor who supposedly created mechanical birds to fly. You imagine those wings fluttering softly in the dusk, a reminder that human ingenuity has always flirted with the impossible. The corridor bends again, opening into a small alcove filled with the faint glow of phosphorescent stones embedded in the ceiling. The soft light reveals sketches of early clocks and devices designed to measure time, crucial for navigation and ritual. You feel the weight of hours ticking by, time measured not by digital beeps but by sundials and water dripping steadily in clepsydras. The steady drip of ancient technology seems oddly soothing, like a heartbeat echoing through history. As you follow Hermes' lead deeper, you notice a dusty workbench strewn with tools and a half-finished model of a crane. You run your fingers lightly over the smooth wood and metal, imagining the careful hands that built it. There's a human story here, intertwined with myth, a reminder that behind every god and hero, there were real people solving everyday puzzles. You take a deep breath, the air tinged with sawdust and a hint of olive oil. The workshop hums softly in your mind, a gentle lullaby of innovation and quiet ambition. Hermes smiles, voice low and conspiratorial. Even Zeus, trapped in his own maze, couldn't invent his way out without a little help. You chuckle quietly, your thoughts drifting like smoke from an ancient forge, ready for the next turn in the labyrinth. You follow Hermes deeper into the twisting maze, your footsteps echoing softly on the cool stone floor. The air grows cooler here, carrying the faint scent of damp earth and moss, an unexpected hint that you're nearing something older, perhaps more secret. Suddenly, you emerge into a vast underground cavern. Soft pools of water reflect the flickering light of torches set along the walls, their flames dancing lazily. You notice the gentle drip of water from the ceiling, each drop causing ripples that spread slowly across the still surface. The labyrinth seems to breathe around you, its pulse slow and steady. Here, Hermes gestures toward a series of narrow stone ledges carved into the cavern walls. These are the fabled chambers of the Minotaur, though curiously, there's no beast in sight. Instead, the space feels oddly serene, as if the myth's monstrous heart has softened over time. You recall the classic tale, the Minotaur, half man, half bull, trapped in the labyrinth by King Minos. But some historians now suggest that the story may symbolize something else entirely, perhaps a cautionary metaphor for the dangers of isolation or the consequences of pride. It's an ancient puzzle layered beneath the legend. An unusual fact floats to your mind. In ancient Crete, bull worship was part of religious practice. Bull leaping ceremonies were performed as a rite of passage, combining athleticism and ritual. The labyrinth could be a symbolic representation of the complex relationship between humans and these powerful creatures. You lean over the water's edge, watching your reflection ripple and blur, imagining the countless feet that have passed here. Pilgrims, prisoners, perhaps even the gods themselves. The quiet hum of dripping water and the soft crackle of torchlight create a hypnotic rhythm, coaxing your mind toward calm. Hermes leans in, whispering about the other labyrinths, less well known but no less mysterious, rumored to exist beneath other ancient cities. These intricate underground mazes weren't always prisons. Sometimes they were ceremonial sites or places of hidden knowledge. The scholarly debate continues about how much of the Minotaur myth was shaped by real historical events versus pure imagination. Was the labyrinth an actual structure? Did the creature really exist? Or was it a story designed to explain complex social or religious phenomena? You feel the cavern's shadows stretch long and slow, welcoming your drifting thoughts as you continue along the silent path. The labyrinth may be a maze of stone and story, but it's also a gentle invitation to lose yourself, to rest, and perhaps to find a little peace in the winding corridors of myth. You press onward through the cavern, the walls narrowing once again and guiding you toward a faint golden glow ahead. As you approach, the light reveals itself as the flicker of torches illuminating a humble chamber, an ancient dining hall of sorts, scattered with rough-hewn tables and low stools. The scent of honey and roasted grains fills the air, oddly comforting in this underground setting. You settle into the quiet ambiance, imagining the long-ago gatherings of mythic figures and mortal guests alike. This is the banquet hall of the Labyrinth, where feasts were held to celebrate victories or to mark solemn occasions. You picture tables groaning under platters of olives, figs, and rustic bread, surrounded by laughter and quiet conversation. Food in ancient times wasn't just nourishment, it was ceremony and social glue. Historians still debate whether labyrinth banquets were real or symbolic, a way to explain communal feasts or rites tied to religious festivals. Either way, the idea of sharing a meal here, deep beneath the earth, sparks a strange warmth. You think about ancient Greek cuisine, the simple yet robust flavors, the use of herbs like oregano and thyme, and the prized honey that sweetened many dishes. Did the guests here sip diluted wine, as was customary, or enjoy fragrant herbal infusions to calm the nerves after a long day's trials? Here's a quirky tidbit. Some scholars propose that the labyrinth's complex layout may have inspired ancient recipes requiring slow, careful preparation. Dishes layered and folded much like the maze itself. Your fingers brush the rough wooden table, worn smooth by generations of hands, and you imagine the chatter of cooks and diners alike. The sound is soft, almost like the murmur of a stream, blending seamlessly into the labyrinth's timeless hum. A distant voice echoes softly, telling of the underworld connection, how the labyrinth might have symbolized the journey between worlds, with food serving as sustenance for both body and soul. You lean back, allowing the gentle flicker of torchlight to lull your thoughts. The idea of feasting deep underground feels oddly grounding, a reminder that even gods and heroes shared simple pleasures. Hermes nudges you gently, his voice a soothing murmur. In a place where paths twist and turn, a meal is the clearest comfort you'll find. You smile softly, the scent of honey lingering in the air as you prepare to step back into the maze's quiet embrace. You tread lightly back into the twisting corridors, the scent of honey and roasted grain fading behind you like a pleasant dream. The labyrinth's shadows deepen, curling gently around your footsteps, wrapping you in a soft, protective hush. The silence here isn't empty. It's full of whispers and forgotten tales, waiting to unfold. As you move, you notice something peculiar carved into the stone walls. Tiny symbols, almost like doodles, etched by unknown hands long ago. Some resemble spirals, others look like delicate waves, while a few curious shapes mimic the outlines of birds in flight. You realize these are the Labyrinth's graffiti, a kind of ancient social media where travelers and captives alike left their marks. Historians still argue whether these carvings were simple boredom busters or held deeper meanings, maybe even secret messages meant to guide lost souls or warn of unseen dangers. Either way, you find comfort in their presence, as if you're not the first to get a little lost here. You recall that graffiti in ancient Greece wasn't limited to labyrinth walls. Across cities, everyday folks inscribed witty comments, prayers, or even romantic confessions onto stone and pottery. This unofficial art offers a glimpse into lives long past, their humor and worries surprisingly relatable. Here's a fun detail. Some scholars think that certain labyrinth markings were intentionally confusing, designed to mislead intruders or protect sacred spaces, adding another layer to the maze's mysteries. You pause to run your fingers along a spiral carving, imagining the restless fingers that made it centuries ago. Perhaps it was a young artisan or a weary messenger trying to leave a breadcrumb trail. The stone feels cool, grounding you in the labyrinth's long memory. As you continue, the air grows faintly cooler, the scent of earth and moss returning like an old friend. The path ahead seems quieter, the labyrinth settling into a slower rhythm. Hermes walks beside you, his voice a low hum. Even in confusion, there's a strange kind of peace. Sometimes getting lost means finally finding rest. You nod, letting your thoughts drift like leaves on a gentle stream, your mind settling deeper into the labyrinth's soothing embrace. The coolness wraps around you as you continue through the winding passageways, the labyrinth's shadows now longer and softer, like a gentle evening tide. The air carries a faint scent of damp stone and wildflowers, an unexpected touch of nature creeping into this underground world. Suddenly, you come upon a small alcove tucked into a quiet corner. Inside, there's a stone basin filled with clear, still water, an ancient spring, long forgotten but somehow untouched by time. You kneel to gaze into the pool, watching the ripples spread and fade like sleepy breaths. Water has always held a special place in myths, symbolizing life, purity, and the thin veil between worlds. In Greek tales, sacred springs were portals to the divine or the underworld, and the labyrinth's own hidden waters whisper of secrets beneath the surface. Historians still debate whether these springs were natural features incorporated into the labyrinth's design or later additions meant to add mystery and wonder. Either way, their presence offers a quiet moment of calm in the twisting maze. A quirky fact: some believe that the labyrinth's water was used for ritual cleansing, purifying both body and spirit before the perilous journey through its corridors. You can almost hear the soft splash of a ceremonial wash, half gentle and reverent. You cup your hands and take a slow sip, cool, fresh, and surprisingly sweet. The water feels like a gift, grounding you as you rest in this peaceful pause. It's a reminder that even in complexity, nature finds a way to soothe and sustain. Your fingers trace the basin's smooth edges, worn by countless hands over the centuries. You imagine the quiet prayers whispered here, hopes for safe passage or dreams of escape. Hermes leans in with a soft chuckle. Even a god can appreciate a good drink after getting hopelessly lost. You smile, feeling a serene connection to all those who wandered this labyrinth before you. Heroes, gods, and ordinary folk alike, united by a shared journey. As you rise, the water's coolness lingers like a gentle promise, and you step back into the labyrinth's soft, enfolding embrace. You press onward, the labyrinth's winding paths unfolding with a slow, rhythmic certainty, like a lullaby sung by stone and shadow. The air feels lighter here, scented faintly with beeswax and aged parchment, an unexpected hint of civilization amid the maze's wild heart. Ahead, you spot a small room dimly lit by shafts of soft sunlight filtering through cracks overhead. Inside, there's a wooden table, scattered with delicate scrolls and faded ink. This forgotten study feels like a quiet sanctuary, a place where the labyrinth's creator might have paused to ponder the maze's secrets. You settle into the moment, imagining Daedalus himself, the master craftsman and inventor, weaving his genius into these twisting walls. His name echoes through history as the man who fashioned wings for his son Icarus, and of course, designed this very labyrinth to confine the Minotaur. Historians still argue whether Daedalus was a real figure or more of a mythic symbol of craftsmanship and cleverness. Either way, his legacy weaves through the labyrinth's story like a gentle thread of human curiosity and ingenuity. A quirky detail. Some ancient sources suggest Daedalus used mechanical devices, early prototypes of gears and pulleys, to design the labyrinth's intricate layout. If true, that would make the maze not just a prison, but a marvel of early engineering. You unroll one scroll carefully, tracing the faded sketches of twisting corridors and secret chambers. The artistry feels intimate, a window into the mind of someone who both created and was trapped by his own labyrinthine imagination. Hermes murmurs beside you, his voice soft and conspiratorial. Sometimes, the greatest puzzles come from within ourselves. You lean back, letting the calm of the room and the slow unfolding of the labyrinth's story wash over you like a gentle tide, your thoughts drifting like the faded ink on ancient parchment. You step back into the labyrinth's embrace, the shadows now softer, almost like the gentle folds of a blanket wrapping around you. The maze seems to breathe with a slow, steady rhythm, each turn unfolding with a quiet, sleepy inevitability. As you move through the winding corridors, your footsteps echo softly, mingling with the distant drip of water and the faint rustle of unseen creatures. The labyrinth feels alive yet peaceful, like a giant breathing in slumber. You begin to reflect on the Minotaur itself, a creature part man, part bull, caught in the middle of human and divine worlds. In Greek myths, the Minotaur symbolizes complex themes of otherness and entrapment, a creature both feared and pitied. Historians still debate whether the Minotaur myth originated from real bull worship rituals on Crete or was simply a cautionary tale woven to warn against hubris and excess. Either way, the labyrinth and its monstrous inhabitant invite a deeper, gentler curiosity. A quirky fact to ease your mind: some scholars suggest the Minotaur was never a literal beast, but rather a title for a powerful priest or ruler in ancient Crete, whose identity was mythologized over time. Imagine the gossip. Did you hear about the Minotaur? Quite the party animal. You pause in a quiet chamber, the walls etched with faint, almost faded paintings of bulls and warriors. These images, worn by time, tell stories of a world where myth and reality blur, inviting you to dream alongside them. Hermes leans close with a smile. Even monsters need a bedtime story. You chuckle softly, feeling the labyrinth's gentle hold, a place where gods, monsters, and mortals share whispered legends beneath the moon's watchful eye. With a slow breath, you continue your journey, the labyrinth's soft maze guiding you toward rest. The labyrinth's paths grow calmer now, the twists and turns less abrupt, as if the maze itself is easing you toward a gentle end. Your steps slow, matching the soft rhythm of your breathing, the quiet hum of the stones beneath your feet. You find yourself in a chamber bathed in warm golden light, sunlight filtering through a hidden skylight high above. Here, time feels suspended, the outside world distant and hushed. This is the heart of the labyrinth, a place of quiet reflection and subtle magic. Zeus, in his wandering, seems to have found his way here too, a place where even the king of gods must pause, lost in the maze of his own making. His story is a gentle reminder that even the mightiest sometimes need to surrender to the unexpected, to let go and simply be. Historians still argue whether these myths were early attempts to explain natural phenomena or simply poetic tales spun for bedtime. Whatever the truth, the labyrinth remains a soothing metaphor for life's winding paths, full of mystery, surprise, and the occasional restful pause. A curious note: some ancient labyrinth designs included places to rest and meditate, suggesting these mazes were not just prisons, but spaces for quiet contemplation, a prehistoric spa day, if you will. You settle down on a smooth stone bench, the air filled with the soft whispers of legends past, your eyes growing heavy with the promise of dreams. Hermes, ever the gentle guide, offers one last whisper. Sometimes getting lost is just another way to find yourself. You close your eyes, letting the labyrinth's quiet embrace lull you towards sleep, where gods and monsters fade into the soft glow of twilight.